When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
Trying to buy an electric car right now in Canada? Good luck. Electric vehicles in short supply, even before the pandemic. 2 out of 3 Canadian dealerships didn't have any in stock. With more on this, let's go to Jeff Turner, Senior Research Lead at Dunsky Energy Consulting, and he authored a Transport Canada report on the shortage of electric cars. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
So why is it so hard to find an electric car in Canada right now?
Well, I mean, you summed it up pretty well. Right now, the chances are that if you go into your local car dealership, you're not actually going to find one on the lot. So that's a real challenge, in a world where we're trying to encourage people to buy plug-in vehicles to reduce their impact on the environment. It's really troubling if we know that right now we don't actually have, a motivated supply chain and sales force that's really pushing these things, and we're really relying on folks going out of their way to find one of these if they've figured out that a plug-in vehicle can make sense for their life.
Is it a supply issue? Are the car companies just not putting their heart into it, not making enough? Is the demand just absolutely crazy? Like what's the issue? Supply, demand?
I think it's always going to be a question of supply and demand, but I think the important question here is which is the driving constraint. And we're at a point now where for a number of years, we've been doing a lot of things to stimulate demand for electric vehicles. Governments have been putting money on the table to help kickstart the market and provide financial incentives. Here in Quebec, it's $8,000 from the provincial government. The federal government last year announced a $5,000 incentive available across the country, and so here in Quebec, it stacks up on top of the provincial incentive. And on the other side of things, one of the first concerns people have about an electric vehicle is, where can they charge it? The number one answer to that is you can charge it at home if you have a driveway, but as far as everything else, if you want to go on a longer trip, Hydro-Quebec has done a lot of work to install charging stations across the province. You can get pretty much anywhere in Quebec now. So with all these efforts to address all these other barriers to adoption of EVs and really help stimulate demand for the vehicles, I think what we're seeing now is that there's a missing piece of the puzzle, and that's the fact that the supply that's there just isn't adequate to meet demand. And so that's why we've been hearing about it for years, and now we have the data to back this up, that there's a lack of supply, and in many cases, myself included, folks are having to get onto months-long waiting lists. I waited for 6 months to get an EV just a couple of years ago.
Wow. So, and Jeff, are you in Quebec? Are you in Montreal?
I'm in Quebec. I'm actually about an hour south. I'm in Hemmingford.
Okay, gotcha. Well,
but I grew up in Montreal.
Jeff, let's focus a little bit more on Quebec. Jeff Turner, by the way, joins us right now. He authored a Transport Canada report on the shortage of electric cars. So, Jeff, we know here in Quebec we have a very generous rebate program or subsidy program. The Quebec government's $8,000. You mentioned the federal government $5,000. That's a lot of money, and some municipalities are even tacking on $1,000 or $2,000 as well. Does that make the situation worse in Quebec, or because there's also some targets that are built in, like the Quebec government has targets where the manufacturers have to sell a certain amount, right, a certain percentage, does that mean that the car companies are focusing more and they're shipping more vehicles to Quebec?
Yeah, so the answer is yes to both. So absolutely, automakers are focusing their inventory on Quebec, much to the frustration of, we do a lot of work with folks in other provinces, and they're having a hard time getting their hands on EVs. But so absolutely. So for example, I drive a Chevrolet Bolt. There are a bunch of dealerships, Chevy dealerships in Quebec that have 20 or more EVs in stock. So they're doing a great job of making sure their dealerships are stocked up at the expense of the rest of Canada. And that sort of applies across the board. Our study found that Quebec has by far the most EV inventory out of any province, almost 2,000 vehicles in February. out of 3,400 vehicles nationwide in on dealership lots.
Wow.
Now, the question is, how does that add up compared to the higher demand that we have here? Because, as you mentioned, it's actually pretty compelling. With $13,000 total incentives available, a lot of folks are looking at their use of a vehicle and how much fuel they buy every year, and seeing a really strong economic argument to switch to an EV. So demand is much higher here. And when we take that into account and try to normalize the results that we found and compare it to the rate at which EVs are selling, we're finding that the supply of EVs in Quebec is actually just about as constrained as the national average. So the question is, yes, we have more inventory, but that inventory is being bought up really quickly, so it's still really hard to find an EV on the
Jeff, just a quick one here to wrap up. To put it in perspective, is this also an issue around the world, or is this is it a bigger problem in Canada?
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen similar studies in the U.S. Where folks have done secret shopper studies and seen whether when you go into a dealership, what's that experience like. But we're also not the only jurisdiction that's looking at the supply side policy, things like Quebec's mandate that requires automakers to hit minimum targets. And so California and about a dozen other states also have targets that they impose on automakers. And in fact, just yesterday, California announced that they're stepping those targets way up, all the way to requiring 100% of new vehicle sales to be electric by 2035.
Jeff, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thanks so
absolutely.
much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
That's Jeff Turner, Senior Research Lead at Dunsky Energy Consulting, and just authored a Transport Canada report on the shortage of electric cars.